Thank you everyone for being here on this rather hot day. Thank you for not bringing up the Vikings, they just lost. But it is so great to be here in Council Bluffs, to be back, and to see so many good friends, including Linda and Fran, and then we've also got, of course, Chris, the Page County Chair. Where are you, Chris? Thank you so much. And Glenn Hurst, the 3rd District Chair. Very good. Mike is here, Mike Ronstall. Thank you so much for Representative Gloria. Thank you for coming by. And then I wanted to mention Emma and Jonah are here, our field staff. And then Lauren is here, our state director, right, over here. And we've got incredible people here. And then we've got, where's Greta, who just met me out there, right over here. And Tommy, one of our legislative people, is here. We had quite an adventure. We woke up yesterday in Florida, that is correct, and did an event on democracy reform, just to give you a sense. And we luckily don't have this in Minnesota and Iowa, but they had 4.5 million people that are eligible to vote who are registered to vote in Florida. And so there's just all kinds of problems. So we did an event on that, then we came here, I was in Des Moines, I'm here, and then somehow going to spend the night tonight via Atlanta, a flight from Omaha in South Carolina. So we are on the tour for a while there, and I think it really sunk in this time that I don't want to be the president for half of America, I want to be the president for all of America. House that literally is running our country like a game show. That is what he does. He thinks of it that way. And someone said, well, reality TV show. Yeah, that's true, but a game show to me is more like what he does. He plays this angle, that angle, another angle the next day, just for more attention for that one moment. I said when I was at the tribal event here, I said in Iowa, I said that great leaders, as an Ojibwe saying, great leaders don't make decisions just for this generation. They do it for 7 generations from now. And this is a guy that can't keep his decisions for 7 minutes from now, is basically what we are dealing with. And the point that I was able to make at the debate that got through is that that there are a lot of people making promises out there on this campaign trail, and I know they sound really good. And some of them are worthy policy ideas. But I think it is very important, given what we got in the White House now, that we don't make up a bunch of things that we're not going to be able to do, or maybe aren't even the right policy decision to make. And so that's why I took some of that on. And did it, I think, in a way that was polite, but in a way that made the point. That there are bold things we need to do. We've been stopped in our tracks from doing it by Donald Trump. And if we really want to win and get these things done, we don't just need to win this election, we need to win big. And we don't just need to win the presidency. We need to win the U.S. Senate. And it is not out of reach, right? Unless we're stupid about it, okay? It is not out of reach. When you look at the races in Iowa, when you look at Arizona, when you look at Alabama, where we have an incumbent. I was just texting with Doug Jones on my way here. When you look at the Colorado, that race, we could do this. When you look at Kentucky, right? I sent out I sent out an email for our candidate there, Amy McGrath, who's a fighter pilot, that said 2 Amy's are better than 1. So I want to make this point, not because I want to get us down into all the Senate politics, but I think you get this, that if we want to do something big when it comes to infrastructure, which you need here, when you think of what happened to Fran and her house and the levee, or if we want to do it, you think of how much it costs this town, that flooding in this county, that we need to move ahead on that. We need to move ahead on doing something about prescription drugs and health care. We need to do something about climate change, and we need to do something about immigration reform. And we're not going to be able to do that if everything just stays in the status quo. So that's one of my arguments, that I'm someone that has brought Democrats, Republicans, and independents with me. And I've proven that time and time again in Minnesota, winning every single congressional district, including Michelle Bachmann's, every single time. And what bothers me sometimes is if we look at just, oh, we can barely make it. I don't want to think of it this way. I want us to think of a national movement because that's what we really need. We saw that in 2018 in Iowa with Cindy's victory. As well as Abby, and when you look at, we're going to have a new congresswoman in Rita, very exciting, with Dave now running, and then of course the mega race of JD. To do all that, we're going to have to be strong at the top. So that's my first point. The second thing is, and I've seen this all over the country, people that voted for Donald Trump who voted for Barack Obama. It's estimated to be about 10%. And these people are having humongous second thoughts. Many of them showing up at my events and telling me this, so I know. And it's actually a few different categories, and it's kind of not so different than how we feel as fired up Democrats about this. And the first thing is they're just horrified. They don't want to have their TV on loud because they don't want their kids or grandkids to hear what this guy is going to say. And you think through history, when we had presidents, and you would watch them on TV if they were making a address, even if you didn't like the president, even if you didn't vote for them, if you thought it was something important that you needed to hear or your family needed to hear, you'd show the respect for our country by hearing out that president. That's not the case anymore. People are afraid to have the volume on because they don't know what this guy is going to say. And it is, whether it is going after people of color, Charlottesville, he says there's two sides, when the other side's a Ku Klux Klan, there are not two sides, whether it's going after immigrants and calling them all kinds of names so that it splashes over to everyone in this country, whether it is not coming through on its promises. And I think that's going to be a very important point to make with some of our voters in Iowa and Minnesota and Wisconsin, Michigan, that voted for Donald Trump, is that he promised you, we get it, he promised you he was going to do all this on infrastructure. Ask Fran, what did he do? No, he didn't do that at all. He actually balked and didn't do a deal when it came to infrastructure. He promised he's going to do something about prescription drugs that would make your head spin. Those are his words on Fox News. Yeah, it makes your head spin in how much they've gone up. For the top 10 drugs going up in double digits. You just go through everything, and I think it's going to be very important to make that case to some of the voters in this state. The farmers whose soybeans are piling up in their bins, and the ethanol investors and people that believe in those jobs or work at those plants that seem to make these secret deals with the oil companies. And then once the economy was going well, when he first came in, no responsibility of his, right? I mean, it was our workers and our businesses that got us out of that downturn. And now he comes in and gloats about it like he caused it, right? Then when things start looking bad in certain areas, like what's happening to our farmers right now, what's happening because of his trade war, what's happening with the long-term debt, which he has greatly added to with that tax bill, then he starts blaming everyone, right? He blames the head of the Federal Reserve. He blames Barack Obama, seriously. He blames the entire country of Denmark. Okay? One of my favorite tweets I did recently that went viral, that did better than any of Donald Trump's tweets that weekend, any of them, was when I said, what's the difference between Donald Trump and Greenland? Yeah. Greenland is not for sale. Then he starts blaming people, and it is like a whiner. And when I talk to our union members and people that are out there working on our bridges, working on our roads, and when you say to them, you know what, we really don't need a whiner in the White House. We've had it with this. They know exactly what I'm talking about because that's what he does on TV every day. So that is actually a different argument, this argument that he's not rising to the challenges of our time. That we are not going to be able to stay where we are as an economic powerhouse if we have 4 more years of that guy. To me, that is a different argument, that he is literally tearing the fabric of this country apart. And I think they're both very important to make, but they're different for different people. And so we have to remember that. And then the final thing I'd say is that our democracy can't withstand 4 years of this guy. You think of what he's done, the voter suppression, the people he supports that support gerrymandering, the fact that you've got people that can't even vote, even though just because of a hyphen in their name in certain states. Some of the stuff that your legislature was messing around with the governor. Some of the things that we have seen when it comes to the foreign invasion in our democracy. And that actually, to me, is one of the best examples of how unpatriotic he's been. Because when he was with Putin at the G20 and someone asked about invading our democracy, he actually made a joke about it with Vladimir Putin, right? And they didn't use tanks or missiles. They used the internet, they used a cyber attack, but they attacked our democracy. And when you think about the fact that hundreds of thousands of Americans died on the battlefield fighting for our democracy and other democracies around the world, this weekend, this anniversary of the bombing of that church in Birmingham, 4 little innocent girls lost their lives in that church at the height of the civil rights movement. They lost their lives because they were them, and they were at that church, and people were fighting against that right to vote for everyone, and that right for everyone to share in this democracy. And that president of ours, he goes and makes a joke about it. You think about gun safety and what he's done on that front. And we come from a proud hunting state, both of our states. But that doesn't mean that hunters don't want to have universal background checks. Fox poll just came out a few weeks ago. Vast majority of hunters want to see universal background checks. Vast majority of Trump voters want to see universal background checks. And I sat across from the president and made that point. This is plugging the game show loophole that's making sure that we do something so that police officers have the time to vet people when they come to apply, not just 3 days. And he literally said to me 9 times, I still have a piece of paper, I wrote down the hash marks when he said it. 9 times he said that we should have universal background checks after Portland. And then the next day he met with the NRA and he folded. That's what this guy's like. So people are tired of these broken promises. So that's why I'm so excited about our campaign and that I got to make that point at the debate. That I really don't want to leave people behind. We can't afford to if we want to win, but most importantly, we can't afford to do it if we're going to govern. And I think about Fran, and I always love to use the example, Linda, of Fran standing outside of that house with those binoculars in Pacific Junction, and she looked like this woman of the prairie that had been there for like ages. You know, she's just standing there with these binoculars. Her house is half submerged in water. She has me look through the binoculars, and she said, this is my house. My husband and I thought we'd retire there. We got it with our 4-year-olds. And she said, and I love the kitchen. I love the way the light comes through the kitchen. But I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to sit in that kitchen again. And then I said, you know, down from Minnesota, well, is this the river right here? Like, really what I meant was, hey, Fran, you built your house next to a river. She didn't build it there for, actually the house was there for almost 100 years. There's still horsehair in the plaster. So I said, is this a river? And Fran says, no, that's the road. She said the river is what? 2.5 miles. Good, because that's how I've been telling the story. You want to make sure it's right after. I have told it for 4 months. It would be nice if it was right. But she says, no, the river is 2.5 miles away from where we're standing right now. So that's climate change. And that's why, as your president on day 1, I get us back into that international climate change agreement. Bring back those clean power rules, which is actually something that the Obama administration negotiated over a period of years. They were totally doable. Minnesota's Xcel Energy, which is a big company, they are totally in support of those rules, as are a number of others across the country. We're working with the small electrics. I understand those issues very well. I got a bunch of them to make it work for them as well. Third day, we bring back the gas mileage standards, which Trump has thrown out.
Yeah.
Even the car companies actually wanted those gas mileage standards. If you can believe, he throws them out. There's some of them are even writing letters that they want them out because California is pushing on them. And then days 5, 6, and 7, we introduce sweeping legislation to get at this. And on day 7, you're supposed to rest like today. So that's the plan. So I am just excited about everything we're going to do, and my 100-day plan that's out there on our website, please look at it. Because when FDR came in, he was in the middle of an economic crisis. That he thought the most important thing was to change the tone and to do things right away and to build trust. That's what we need to do in our country right now. We need to do some things without Congress that are legal. And I have over 100 things that you can do without Congress on that website. Yay! Then I truly believe that there are people of goodwill that want to work on these pressing issues that I've talked about today, especially immigration reform, especially the drug prices and some of the healthcare issues. And right now, honestly, they're afraid of Donald Trump, right? He's going to go and primary them, so we have to get rid of them to make this work. So that's how I approach this thing. And I just want you to feel like you are part of something big, because you think about the day after that inauguration, when all those people marched, including in this great state. They didn't just go home and cry, they went out and marched. They marched in Alaska, right? They marched really actually all over the world. And the day after that, 6,000 women signed up to run for office. And now it's up to tens of thousands of women. And day 9, when that mean-spirited refugee order came out, people just spontaneously showed up at airports. They showed up at non-international airports to protest. And on day 100, my favorite march, the March for Science, with my favorite sign, when we want science, when do we want it? After peer review. In the summer, when they were trying to get the Affordable Care Act repealed, and all fighting 48 Democrats stood together, joined by 3 Republicans, with Senator McCain coming over and whispering to me what he was going to do before he did it, and voting no. That happened. And then you go to that fall, the first glimmers of hope when there are these legislative races in really hard districts, right? In Virginia and in New Jersey. And one guy, who the day of the Women's March, legislator, had said, I hope they come home in time to make dinner. He got defeated by an African-American woman. The spring after Parkland, where the students became icons, and they didn't just become icons, they didn't just march and they didn't just talk about it. They talked to their dads and their grandpas and their moms, and students across the country did the same thing, and it started to shift public opinion, kind of like what happened with gay marriage. It's exactly the same thing, with kids leading the way, because we tried when I was in law enforcement, and the moms tried, and the moms are still leaders in this, but what really made a difference was those kids. And so then they voted in record levels at the midterm election, and now they're going to vote in record levels in 2020. That's the march we're on. We have never been alone, not for one day. We've been joined by people all over the country, and increasingly, as you saw in Cindy Axne's election, as we saw when we won the governorship of the state of Kansas. No, we lost it in Iowa. We did win in Kansas. As all that, we realized we were joined not just by our fired up base, which is really fired up, but also by independents and moderate Republicans. And we're gradually, slowly but surely taking back those voters. So we cannot screw it up in 2020. We cannot afford to win, right? Failure is not an option. I wanted to say that at the debate because I was in Houston. That's another line from the Apollo. But failure is just not an option. We just can't afford to lose this one. And that's how I feel about that. That's why I think it's so important to unify behind our candidate, why I believe we should not be beating up each other, but working on beating Donald Trump. That should be our focus. Legitimate policy disagreements, which I tried to show. Bernie and I came in together. We are friends, right? We truly are. And he said that when he was in Minnesota 2 weeks ago. And we are friends, but I just disagree with him about keeping people off their current insurance in 4 years. I think we're better off doing the public option idea. So we can have those debates, but I don't think they should be personal, and I think they should be with one major focus, and that is beating Donald Trump. So I just want to tell you that's where my heart is. I have loved being here. I love working on rural issues. I'm the only one up there on the stage. They didn't ask about rural again. I am the only one up on the stage on the Agriculture Committee. I think you all know I've worked really a lot. First with Tom Harkin, and then with Bill Seck when he was Ag Secretary on these issues that are going to be very important to Iowa. I was the first to come out with a strong seniors plan, which is a huge issue in this state. We're seeing a doubling of our senior population. They used to call it, I used to call it the silver tsunami, and then I decided, I was told that was too negative, so I called it the silver surge. But that is about long-term care and making it easier to afford long-term care, taking on Alzheimer's, all of those things. As well as the work that needs to be done on mental health and addiction, which I talked about a little bit at the end of the debate with the question about resilience. Those are bread and butter issues that matter in the state, and I think that's how you win. So I just want to thank everyone for coming out on this hot day. I see that swirling fan is really keeping things cool in here. But thank you, everyone. We're out there to win. Please sign up to help in any way, and let's go out there and win this congressional district and win Iowa. Thank you.